All right, we are going live. So this is Chris Berry, Castle Wealth Group, certified financial planner, certified all-law attorney, and we do these webinars every week, just answering questions clients or people have or they submit. Each week we start with a positive focus, just something positive that's happened over the last last week or so, and if you do have any legal, financial, or tax questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. We answer these live. And so we have a couple of questions coming in, and I appreciate that. I'm going to figure out the best way to capture those. Give me just a second here. All right. And all right. So we're going to start with positive focus, something positive that happened over last week. Positive focus for me was I just got promoted in this martial art called jiu-jitsu, where it's basically kind of like wrestling without any striking or anything. And so I got promoted to purple belt, and it's something I've been doing for like 9 years. So the picture to the left is my wife and I about 9 years ago. She attended kind of one of my first classes. I was a white belt, but I just got promoted after 9 years to purple belt, which was kind of cool. Something jiu-jitsu, it's like chess using the human body. So it's kind of cool. It's a great way to relieve stress, and I was pretty proud of myself. And it was great having my family there watching. So that was pretty cool. So that was my positive focus. But now we'll get on to the actual questions. And before we get into the questions, something I wanted to share, and this is pretty relevant just based on kind of where things are going right now. If you look at like the S&P 500 of the market, like we've been on a, like year to date, up until about a month or two ago, we were on a pretty good run, but now things are kind of trending back down. So a lot of clients are looking for opportunities to protect against the volatility, especially as we're getting into retirement and things. So I just gave actually a workshop today, and we're talking about some of the tools to combat volatility. So I figured I'd just run through these, and then I will get into answering some of the questions that have been submitted. So what we found, especially since the pandemic over the last couple of years, is that the market doesn't always go up. Like sometimes it goes down. And so that's what we've experienced over the last, say, 3 years, a lot of volatility. The pandemic happened. Things actually tracked up after that. And then 2021, things tracked way back down. And then we're kind of building again. Year to date, a lot of things are still up, but now things are starting to track down in terms of the markets. And we see this a lot whenever we're going into presidential election years, because the markets don't like uncertainty. Not to say like if the Republicans win or the Democrats win, they just don't like the uncertainty of not knowing where things are going to be going in the future. And so we expect a lot of volatility really going into the presidential elections. And then what the studies say is no matter what side wins, after that, we see things kind of tracking up again, just because now we know which direction things are going. So some of the tools that we've used to combat volatility, I wanted to just talk about. So iBond, and I'm just going to talk briefly on these, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. But these are some of the main tools we use to combat volatility. iBonds, over the last couple of years, they've been like the hottest thing in the world. Everyone's talking about iBonds. And what iBonds are, they're bonds issued by the federal government, but they're tied to inflation. And so when we've seen this big increase in inflation over the last couple of years, iBonds have been amazing. Like at their peak, they were offering like a 9% guaranteed rate of return. But the government has said that inflation is kind of coming back down, even though like the cost of my hamburger is still like double what it used to be. So we don't really think iBonds are the greatest investment right now. I don't have the current numbers, but I think they're about 4%. So I had a conversation with a client earlier yesterday, actually, and we're talking about, they had some iBonds. They're talking about whether they should invest more in iBonds. And right now, I probably wouldn't move more money into iBonds. In fact, I'd look at cashing out those iBonds just because The government's saying inflation is going down, so the value of those I bonds are going down. And if you look at it historically, like I bonds have been like 1 to 2% rate of return historically. We just kind of had this period of time where they're really a hot commodity. So if you have I bonds, I probably would look at, depending on the situation, maybe getting out of those. If you bought them and it hasn't been the full 5 years, you're going to pay a 3-month penalty on interest. But still, I might take that money and shift it somewhere else. And one of those places might be Treasury bills or T-bills. Treasury bills can be tax-free. Right now, you're looking at kind of 4 to 5% for like a 6-month period. Treasury bills are a great way for kind of short-term money. Really a big one that's standing out right now is high interest savings accounts. So we have a high yield savings account or high interest savings account. It's offering 5%, completely liquid. You just connect it to your current bank account. You can move money in and out at will. It's not a guaranteed 5% forever, but we've seen at least our high yield savings account that we have at Castle Wealth Group, starting beginning of the year is about 4.25%, going to 4.5 to 4.75. Right now we're at 5%. So if you want more information on our high yield savings account, just shoot us an email. It's FDIC protected. There's no fees or anything. A lot of our clients are really appreciating for that lazy money or that cash they have on hand, the high yield or high interest savings account. Buffered ETFs are a great tool, especially short term. The way these work is that they build in a buffer, or so like a downside protection. And that downside protection could be like 10%, could be 20%. So let's say we have a 20% buffered ETF. So market goes down 10%, you don't lose anything. 15%, you don't lose anything. 25%, if we have a 20% buffer, we might lose 5%. Now, of course, there's a trade-off, and that trade-off is that there's a cap on how much you can earn. And so if we have a 20% downside, we might have a 12% cap on the upside. So for short term, it's a great way to kind of build in some downside protection. Nice thing is that this is liquid. You can get in and out of it, so you don't have to hold it for like 6 months or a full year. But it's a way to participate in the market. And it tracks the S&P 500. So we're not utilizing bonds as kind of the safety portion. It's a great alternative to that. A little more complicated structured notes. These you have to hold for a period of time, and they could be structured on the S&P 500 or specific individual investments, but it builds in some downside protection and can offer some guarantees. Index universal life insurance, pretty complicated, not right for every situation, but it offers that principal protection. And that's the key with all of these things we're talking about right now, is that it builds in the downside protection. There are some other advantages with the IULs where it grows tax-free. There is a cap typically on how much you can earn. It might be like 10% per year, but it grows tax-free, it's principal protected, and it can offer some alternatives in terms of protection from long-term care costs and offer like a tax-free death benefit. And then fixed index annuities, principal protected, so you're not going to lose your money. Offers very good growth opportunities. The trade-off here is going to be that the money is going to be locked up for a period of time. Typically, these are built on like 10-year chassis, where if you pull out more than 10% in a year, there might be some fees associated with it. But a lot of times by year 3 and 4, even if you're to cash out the whole thing, you're going to be positive. But all of these tools, if you're looking for something that's giving you some downside protection, where you're concerned with where the market is going, gives you some opportunities to still experience growth, but build in some downside protections. So thought it was important to share this. Just came back from a workshop where we had a lot of questions on these things. So I wanted to share some of these alternatives versus just that plain like 60-40, 60% equity, 40% bond portfolio. Because really what we found is bonds aren't the kind of the hedge that we've always thought securities have been. So just wanted to start off sharing that but now we'll get into some of the questions that have been submitted. So give me a second and let me change screens here. All right, and I'm gonna copy this question into a Word document so I can address it. So here's another question coming in. Someone's asking about what about CDs, certificate of deposits? I'm not a huge fan of CDs right now, just because there's some alternatives that are like CDs, you might get 4 or 5%. And if you're looking for liquidity, like a high yield savings account, which is at 5% right now, it gives you complete liquidity and your money isn't tied up for the 3, 6, or 9 months that you see with CDs. And then if you do want like a guaranteed like 5% for say a period of time, say like 2 years or 3 years, 5 years, we would look at like multi-year guaranteed annuities, MIGAs. Same things basically as CDs offered by insurance companies, but offering a better rate of return. So if you do want like to tie your money up for a period of time, I probably wouldn't look at a CD right now. I'd look at like a multi-year guaranteed annuity if you're looking at a longer time period. If you're looking at a shorter time period, then at least right now, as of today in October, I'd be looking at a high yield savings account because you can get similar rates to CDs, but it's completely liquid. So you wouldn't have any penalties if you wanted the money sooner rather than later. All right, so let me share my screen here. And get that out of the way, that one out of the way. All right. So here's a first question that just came in. So I'm kind of reading this. Nope. Yeah. All right. So mom has around 500,000 in an IRA plus some pensions, Social Security income. When applying to assisted living, do we just not include her Castle Trust funds? This was established about 3 years ago. So, so sometimes like assisted living or nursing homes, they're going to ask you for like a asset checklist, or they want to make sure that you have enough money to pay for assisted living or the nursing home. So it really depends on the situation of what are you trying to accomplish. It's your choice of whether you include the assets in the Castle Trust or the Asset Protection Trust. But understand that like if we get to needing nursing home care or Medicaid, whatever is in that trust is completely exempt. So typically if we have enough funds outside of the Castle Trust or the Asset Protection Trust, enough funds to make that assisted living or nursing home like happy enough to accept us as a client, then we would not disclose the funds in the Asset Protection Trust. But that's the nice thing about the Asset Protection Trust is you have a choice of whether you want to include it or exclude it. So because you can always get access to those funds. So if you're looking at like a nice assisted living or nice nursing home, and you look at the assets outside of the Asset Protection Trust, you have the flexibility to include those funds to make sure that your loved one gets into the place that you want. But when it comes to qualifying for governmental benefits like Medicaid, you have the choice of having those assets excluded. So it's kind of a case by case basis. But if we have $500,000 in an IRA, any assisted living or nursing home, they're going to accept your loved one without any issues. So in this situation, I probably would exclude the assets in the Castle Trust just because there's enough funds outside that's going to make that nursing home or assisted living happy. Typically, they don't need anywhere near that amount. Like a lot of times, even the nice nursing homes or assisted living, if they see like 2 or 3 months where you can pay for it, they're going to be more than willing to accept that loved one into their care. So in this situation, I would most likely exclude the assets in the Castle Trust. And again, the Castle Trust, it's a form of an asset protection trust, protecting against that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. Okay. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. Now let me get into the next one. Again, when we do these webinars, these are questions that just come in on the fly. So I don't have any like fancy PowerPoints or anything to go along with it. Right. All right, here's the next one. My husband is 80, I'm 70. We have not purchased long-term care insurance, and my husband is in the mid stage of Alzheimer's. He was responsible for all of our financial matters prior to his disease. I am now responsible for the financial matters. I need to withdraw his RMDs, wondering how to best invest his money concerning the husband's care needs in the future. Again, we got to see how the assets are structured. At this point, obviously, long-term care insurance isn't going to be part of the equation. Most likely, what I would look at doing, depending on where your husband is in terms of, is he living at home still? Is he in assisted living or nursing home? That would factor into how I'd advise in this situation. But let's assume that he's still either living at home or home care. He's not necessarily in a nursing home yet. What I would do is I would establish an asset protection trust so that if he continues on that elder care journey of needing nursing home care, and we can make it 5 years before he gets to the point of needing nursing home care, I would look at structuring the asset protection trust and then figuring out the best strategy to move money into that trust. And I'd look at also from a financial planning standpoint, I'd look at, okay, what money do we think we're going to need over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? I would keep that liquid available. I would keep that outside of the trust, maybe even like in a high yield savings account, like we talked about. So it's liquid, it's available at any time. We can move money out of it, but at least it's growing at 5%. And then any money that we're not using, say over the next 3 years or 5 years, I would then put that into the asset protection trust, and I try to make sure that that money is growing. My husband is 80, so if he's 80 on the dot, not 81, there's some things we can do where we can leverage the assets so that we can double the payout if he were to need long-term care in the future. So my best advice in this situation would like reach out to us. Let's schedule a time to sit down and review everything, because there are some nuanced pieces to this that we need to address. Like how much money is pre-tax money, like IRA money? Is any money wrapped up in annuities where we can't get access to it? But the big thing is I would be looking at two things. One is the financial planning aspect of how do we get through the next, say, 3 years. And so that would kind of be the soon bucket. And then the later bucket would be money 3 years later. So I take it like a kind of a bucket planning approach to it, of figuring out short term, how much money do we need, like kind of liquid that we're going to be using, that I'd have in something liquid like a high yield savings account. And then I'd have more of a longer term bucket of, okay, this is money that we probably won't use over the next 3 years. That should be invested differently, with the idea that A, we're not going to use it, and B, we have a time horizon for it to grow quicker, or grow it at a better rate than just keeping it, say, in cash or a high yield savings account. So it's a little bit of a nuanced question where I'd need some more facts to best advise on it. But that's what we do as elder law attorneys, certified elder law attorney, certified financial planner. It's our goal to make sure that this money lasts as long as you do, to be honest. So hopefully that was helpful. All right, and then here's one more question. And again, if you do have any more kind of legal, financial, or tax questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Let me share my screen real quick. Let's go live. Share my screen. All right. I want to take 20,000 from my IRA. I know I have to pay taxes on it, but do I also have to add it 20,000 to my income for yeah. So whenever you pull money out of an IRA or 401k or anything pre-tax, that's always going to show up as income tax. And so, and you always have to declare it as income. And that's where we're giving a workshop earlier today. We know taxes are going up in the future. So one of the biggest opportunities right now is to pull money in a intelligent manner from those pre-tax accounts, like your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, because we know taxes are going up. Like we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that's going to expire in 2026. And so what that means, if we pull 20,000 now, we might be paying a 22% tax versus if we wait until 2026, if you're at that same income tax bracket, you're going to be paying a 25 or 28% tax. So one of the things that we've been stressing with our clients since even before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was looking at having some type of IRA exit strategy. And we even have an article that was published in Forbes that talks about this IRA exit strategy. So if you want a copy of that PDF, copy of that article that we had published in Forbes, it was either Forbes or Kiplinger, just shoot us an email and we'll get you some more information on it. But yeah, if you pull 20,000 from your IRA, it's going to show up as income tax. And again, those IRAs, those pre-tax accounts, you're going to have to pay tax on them, whether you like it or not. It's just a matter of when and how. And so if we know that taxes are going up in the future, then I'd rather pay a 22 or 24% tax now than a 25, 28 or much higher tax in the future. So yeah, if you pulled 20,000 this year, and again, I'd have to look at your taxes and your tax bracket, but I would do that all day. And in fact, I would look at your taxes, figure out how much space there is in that tax bracket. And I might even pull more than that. So if you need that $20,000 for like a trip or buying a new car, understand that you might want to just look at your tax brackets and figure out how much space there is. For example, a lot of our clients, especially if they're married, they fall in the 22% tax bracket, which is between 90,000 and 190,000. And so if you're at say 100,000 and you need $20,000 to for a trip or a new car or whatever it may be, okay, that's going to put you at 120, but still you have another 70,000 you could pull before you get into the 24% tax bracket. So if you don't do it now, any money you pull from the IRA, including like required minimum distributions after 2025, instead of being taxed at 22%, which is what it would be taxed right now if you pull it out, it would be taxed at 25 or 28%, depending on where you fall in that 22% tax bracket. So again, what we've been banging this drum for a while. I think taxes are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities right now. And so if you do have pre-tax accounts like a 401k, a IRA, 403b, even if you're not forced to take money out of them, if you're over the age of 59 and a half, I'd be looking at some type of strategy to try to pull money out of that account sooner rather than later, developing that IRA exit strategy. And that's something we're working with a lot of our clients. And to be honest, like just in terms of value add, that's one of the biggest value adds that we can do. We can run a tax analysis looking at pulling money each year. And for a lot of our clients, especially if you have like over $1 million of IRA money, we can put extra hundreds of thousands of dollars into the portfolio over your lifetime and what we leave as a legacy to the kids. All right, here's another question that just came in, and I appreciate all these questions. All right, hold on, let me share my screen. Here's another one. When mom passes, what happens to Roth IRA monies that go to the kids? So Roth IRA, it's a great tool. The nice thing about the Roth IRA is it grows tax-free. For a lot of our clients, when we're talking about having that IRA exit strategy, one of the strategies is a Roth conversion, where we take pre-tax dollars, pay the tax, and then now it moves into the tax-free bucket. So if someone passes away with a pre-tax, or not a pre-tax, with a Roth IRA that is a post-tax account, what happens is it goes to the kids tax-free. And then from there, due to the Secure Act, which passed in 2019, now all that money in the Roth IRA has to come out of the Roth within 10 years. So let's say we have mom and there's 3 kids. That one Roth IRA would be split up amongst the 3 kids. Each kid would have a inherited Roth IRA from mom, and then they would have to take all the money out of the Roth within 10 years. There's no tax on it. It just has to come out of the Roth and then go somewhere else, whether that's a checking account, savings account, or other investment account. And really, that's one of the big strategies that we're utilizing with our clients is we're trying to transition money out of those pre-tax accounts, because if the kids were inheriting like a traditional IRA, a pre-tax IRA, the kids would have to pay all the tax on it within 10 years. And a lot of times, like when mom or dad passes away, maybe the kids are working and they're still at their prime earning years. So now they still have their wages or salary, which jumps up their income tax brackets. But now on top of that, they have to pay the tax on these pre-tax accounts they're inheriting. So that's why really with a lot of our clients, we're stressing this idea of having an IRA exit strategy, of pulling money out of these pre-tax accounts, maybe doing Roth conversions or trust conversions, so that now when the kids inherit the money, well, it makes the rest of their retirement more tax efficient, but then also B, when the kids inherit the money, it comes to them tax free. And that could be from a Roth, it comes to them tax free. It could be from a trust. Still, it comes to them tax free because they get step up in basis. So really, we're stressing, and again, we've been banging this drum for a while, developing that IRA exit strategy. It's going to make your retirement much more tax efficient. And then what you leave to the kids is going to be much more tax efficient as possible. Because really, that's one of our goals, is to try to make sure your money or your parents' money lasts as long as possible. And then also we're trying to put as much money into your pocket or the kids' pocket versus leaving it to the IRS. And with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where we know taxes are going up in 2026, and then with the Secure Act, where we know that they're going to force the kids to pay all the tax on those pre-tax accounts within 10 years, that's just going to hammer them from a tax perspective. So I think taxes, and I've said this many times, I think taxes are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities based on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And there's been talk about, well, what if they extend it and that type of thing? I think a lot of that will depend on the presidential election. But either way, like, we're $32 trillion in debt. Like, prior to the pandemic and prior to passing of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we were $22 trillion in debt. So I think the government has to figure out a way to raise more tax revenue. So I foresee them letting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expire. And then I think taxes are going to have to go up much higher in the future. So if you do have pre-tax accounts, like more than 250,000 of IRA money or 401k money, really you should be engaging in some type of IRA exit strategy, because it's going to put more money in your pocket for the rest of your retirement, and then also what you leave as a legacy. And if you have any questions on that, or if you want to see how it applies to your situation, one of the things we can do is run a tax analysis where I can show you that if we engage in this IRA exit strategy, maximizing either 22 or 24% tax bracket, depending on your situation, it's going to put a lot more money in your pocket and what you leave to the kids versus leaving to the next generation. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Make it a great week. Take care. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.